So Jet sent out over 100 resumes and got zero response. How on earth do you turn around getting a zero response rate to a 70% rate with the next 10 job application that you send out, you get 7 responses. And really and truly, after completing a 4-year program in Canada, I think a lot of us who have gone to school expect to be stepping out of university and people to literally be begging us for a resume, or at least kind of giving us some sort of a response. Even 1% is what we would expect, because there's this narrative that education is the path to success, but we didn't have this seamless, smooth transition out of school. Did you step out of school expecting this? You who went to school, you who are going to go to school, what do you expect?
As I was walking to work, I remember just like slow tears coming.
Today, we're going to get back together with Jet. This is episode 2 of our immigration stories. And Jet is going to talk about how she turned around that response rate from applying to 100 jobs to cutting down to applying to 10 jobs and getting at least 7 of those employers to respond. So welcome back, Jet. Guys, if this is the first episode you're watching, this is Jette Stubbs. This is episode 2. Go back and watch episode 1. I'm Christina, your friendly Canadian immigrant, and the host of this platform, as told by Canadian immigrants. How did you turn things around, Jet? What did you do? Let's get into the meat of the matter, because people are experiencing this 100% exactly right now. I can name at least 5 people.
I can name way more than 5 people, because like now this has become my career, right? Like now I help people design work to fit their life. But like you said, Christina, I had 90 days to find a job or leave the country, and I sent out over 100 applications. And I know a bunch of people who sent out 200. I was reading on LinkedIn recently, somebody said they sent out over 2,000 job applications and they got 0 responses. Can you imagine how long it takes to send out 2,000 job applications? And here
But
I was, I
also,
sent
how
out
much
10.
fear are they putting into sending out 2,000 applications? That sounds like hit, click, 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 click. But okay, yes, 90 days to find a
100%.
job.
100%. And they needed to find a job.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with needing to find a job. Like, we need money to live.
Yeah.
That is a reality. And if when you are looking for a job, at a certain point, you'll be like, I will take anything that I can get. This is like a scarcity mindset. Anything that I can find, I will take. I just need money. And then I can figure out how to make it work, but I need money for groceries to cover expenses. And at this point in time in my life, like, I was getting my food from a food bank. I was living with a friend's family who offered to give me room and board kind of all in one. And then I would supplement groceries by getting food. My food from the food bank would supplement their grocery bill. And I couldn't even afford, like, I did have a part-time job that gave me $500 a month to live a month, because it was part-time. And it took me, it wasn't like the friends that I would be living with lived in the suburbs. So, and I couldn't afford a bus pass. So I'd walk 45 minutes to an hour to work, trying to pursue this dream, but being stuck in this like economic purgatory of never being able to pull my finances together to make it work. And I felt like I did everything I was supposed to do. You know, I built out my education. I got my degree. I did well in school. I built experience. I was willing to work hard. And I just needed an opportunity for somebody to see me, for somebody to give me a chance.
In Canada.
In Canada. So that I can do this part-time job. And as I was walking to work, I remember just like slow tears coming. And I was like, if I stay, like, I am terrified of living paycheck to paycheck. I am terrified of never being able to afford to go home. I am terrified of sort of living in this idea of, so the biggest shift that I made, I did all the free workshops. I was broke, right? Like I was telling you, I had $50 at the end of the month, like to live off of $50. And I couldn't afford the bus pass. So I had no money to be paying for a coach or paying for services. And I went to every free immigration or newcomer service I could find, every international student coaching or career coaching program that I could find. I remember I did a career coaching program that was being offered by my university. and they said they want to make sure it's a limited capacity, it's something new that they're trying, and they said you pay $20 to attend. $20 is almost half my budget for the month of like what I
Mm-hmm.
had left, but you get the $20 back at the end of it. And so I let them hold my like
Accountability. Mm-hmm.
yeah, okay. And I let them hold my $20 so I could attend this session for the week. And I would put on my one suit like that I got for free from like a newcomer clothing drive thing. And it was hard enough to find that suit because in the Caribbean, a lot of us are curvy, and a lot of clothing in Canada, particularly back then, was not designed for curvy folks. So it took me a while to find a suit that fit, and it fit awkwardly. It looked like I got it from a clothing drive.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was, after attending like all of these sessions, reading all the books that I could get on the library on how to find a job, I was super frustrated because the truth is a lot of the advice is conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
What you should do, how your resume should look, what you should say, how to prepare, all of the advice is conflicting. One person will say do it this way, another person will say do this. They get into the nitty gritty. You should have a beautifully graphically designed resume. You should have a very basic font resume. You should focus on networking. This is how you should do it. You should apply online, but do hyper targeted and then network and reach out to people. All of these steps were different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to find this path, and I did not have a lot of time. It was 90 days to find a job or leave the country. But all of the advice on how I should solve that was conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
And after I'd sent out that 100 applications, to realize that I had a pretty good resume. Like I did not have a blank resume where it was just my education. I had done 3 internships at different banks in the Bahamas. I had volunteered in the International Student Center. And I had progressive volunteer experience that turned into work experience that was giving me that $500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And I had experience. I had accomplished things. And then I had this degree where every year I was doing labor market research to tie it to things that are relevant in the field, but nothing. And I was like, well, what else can I do? So what I did was I said, all of this information is conflicting. In one of my sociology classes, the professor, who was great, he taught me about how to do graduate research. And one of the things that he taught was how to codify information. So how to go through and find different themes in information and group similar themes together.
Okay.
And so I took that lesson and the books that he taught me around that, and I said, I'm so frustrated with the conflicting information that I am getting. But what if I find the same themes that everybody is agreeing on, that everybody says is true, and then I use that to map my path? Yes. So I went and I said, okay, I'm tired of all of this conflicting information, but everybody is saying that I need to make a tailored resume. So that is true. Everybody is saying that it should talk about solving problems, and it should be like a history of achievements. Previously, my resume was a history of tasks and responsibilities.
Activities. Checked the boxes.
Yes, I checked the boxes. I was there. These were the activities that I was doing.
Yes, I was there.
I was there.
Attendant. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is it tells employers that I don't know how I can help you.
Yeah.
And I need money. Please give me a job.
Yes.
And please tell me how I can add value. I will take anything. And I'll see people, like even today, 2024, people are putting that on their LinkedIn profile. I will do anything in any industry, in any field. I need money now. I'm about to be evicted.
Yeah.
Right? And the way you get to that point is partly by telling employers, I don't know how I can help you. So you figure out how I fit into your company.
Yeah.
And you're putting that work on the employer.
Yes.
And
I'm so awesome and I did all these things. I look good. So you just tell me how it works for you.
But you're not even really saying I did all of these things. Like I did all of these, I achieved all of these goals. You're saying I did all of these tasks. I don't know if they helped, but this is what I did. And so can you pay me? Because clearly I know how to do tasks.
Yes.
And I'm not saying this as judgment. Please understand that this is exactly what I was doing when I sent out over
and this is what we were taught.
Yes.
Yeah.
You write out a history of tasks and responsibilities, and it's basically your resume is your life history and your history of your tasks and responsibilities.
Yes.
And I shifted that to say a resume is a history of meeting people's needs who have a similar problem to the problem that I'd like to solve.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the number one shifts that I made.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I needed to make a resume that talked about solving one core problem that employers cared about. And I had to figure out what that problem was.
Mm-hmm.
So I mapped out this path because I realized if I'm going to be in Canada, I don't want to be doing work that I hate. I do not like the snow. It's been 15 years. I still don't like the snow. It's not my thing. I don't like cold weather. My fingertips get cold. I've still been trying to find ways to like keep my body truly fully warm in the winter. And I've bought like the expensive coats and stuff. So for me to find out what type of job that I wanted, because I didn't want to struggle in this cold, and all of these things add up financially. It's like, how am I gonna make this work? It was high stress.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I said, well, how can I figure out how my skills add up? So I wrote out the skills that I enjoyed using, and I started to go and I typed them out into Google. And I said, okay, I just typed in random combinations of skills. I typed in business sociology job. That was way too broad. And then I went and I said, okay, what subsets of like, which courses did I like within my business degree? Which courses did I like within my sociology degree? And what things did I learn while I was studying that I would want to turn into a job? And then I started to write more niche things like human resources, training and development
Mm.
job.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, or and I would combine that with like community development, human resources, training and development, community development job. Now I've called that a rabbit hole. So I find people have trouble connecting skills to market demand. Like, how can you combine the skills that you like using into jobs that people are willing to pay high amounts of money for? And what type of life do I want to live? So I now have my like happy career formula that is very similar to ikage, which is like a Japanese word that means like, I think, reason for being.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. And it's a similar formula, but I didn't find out about this framework until like 10 years after I developed my framework. And I think that's a good thing because when people come to the same conclusions through different pathways,
Yeah.
it means the information is more valid.
Yes.
And I took things that I don't think go together, but things that I enjoy doing, and I
Yeah.
use both of those keywords
Mm-hmm.
um, to tie my skills to labor market demand and
Mm-hmm.
jobs that pay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to rank those jobs by salary
Mm-hmm.
and by work flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a list of what I would want my life to look like for it to feel worthwhile for me to stay in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And that list included at least 3 weeks vacation so I could go and see my family for at
Mm-hmm.
least 3 weeks out of the year. Because, yeah, maybe I didn't want to go back, but I still love them. I still want to see people and I still
Yeah.
want to take some time out of the winter and be in the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I want to see my beach. I love the beach that I grew up near.
Right.
Um, it took me down paths that I hadn't considered. Then I could consider which one of those jobs that I was finding that tied to market demand, which one best fit my life. So imagine like your life goals are up here, your skills are over here, and then market demand is over here. You need to your the money that you make and how you solve people's problems funds your life.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to do skills that you enjoy using to fund to enjoy life, right? Like you want to enjoy life not just outside of work but in work. And then the skills that you enjoy using are the skills that you use to solve people's problems.
Mm-hmm.
And in the sweet spot of those things is your happiest career,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you just have your skills, meaning market demand, but you're not considering the life that you want to live, you could be living your best career, best in terms of the money that is coming into your bank account, but you are hating your job, you
Yeah.
are
Not
stressed out,
fulfilling. Mm-hmm.
you could be in a toxic work environment, you could hate who you were speaking to on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to combine all these things. So I wrote out the life that I want to live. I looked at the skills that I like using, the skills that I don't think go together that I would love to combine. And then I used a rabbit hole process to combine that to market demand. And what I realized was there were a bunch of people who were just like me, who were graduating from university, who were struggling to find jobs. And I could teach them the same process that I'm using to sell myself and all of these beliefs that I'm changing about how career searching works.
Uh-huh.
And I took that, um, and I said, okay, I think I want to work in a university environment and like career education, but more like bridging the gap between all of this theoretical knowledge that we're learning and how do we apply it to real
Practical.
world,
Mm-hmm.
practical making money.
Mm-hmm.
And there was actually a field that was fairly new at the time called experiential education that was all about creating internships and doing this kind of work. And so I looked at all of the experiential education jobs that I could find, and I found 10. And I applied to the 10 of them within Toronto because I realized I did not, one of my criteria is I did not want to live in London, Ontario. I wanted to live in Toronto. I wanted to go where the diversity was.
London has a bad rap. We're sorry, London. We're so sorry.
Yes. I wanted to go where the diversity was. And even though it was more expensive and I wanted to be able to afford there, the other thing is when I graduated from university, I spoke to a lot of my peers, like my international student peers from the International Student Center, which was one of the best parts of London. That's a good part of London. And and I spoke to some of my Canadian peers and I said, how much money do you expect to make when you graduate? Remember, this is 2011. They said 25 to 30,000. And most of the jobs I was finding was in that range, 25 to 30,000,
Uh-huh.
except for some of these jobs in university environments where I'd be making 50, 55 starting, which is much better, right? That's like you're almost talking about double the amount.
Yes.
Um, sorry, I applied for 10 jobs. I got 7 interviews, and um, I was shocked. Like at this point, I was like 60, 70 days into my 90-day job search. I needed things to turn around quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I called one of my friends who lives in Richmond Hill, which is about like 45 minutes north of Toronto. And I said, I got an interview in Toronto, but I don't know, like I need help. And she's like, okay, can you afford a Greyhound bus ticket? I don't even know if Greyhound runs anymore. I don't think they do.
Yeah. Right
They
now?
do?
Yeah.
I thought Greyhound, maybe they closed to the
In
States.
Canada.
Um, but because the Via Rail train I could not afford. But the Greyhound is like the cheaper version. I could afford that
Yeah,
within
the
my
Greyhound is here.
budget.
What?
Um, and I took a Greyhound and she met me at the Greyhound station and she drove me up to her home in Richmond Hill, and such a good friend, like such a good friend. She drove me to my interview. She helped me print out everything that I needed. She drove me to my interview in Mississauga. When I got my interview in Mississauga, I was like, what is Mississauga? I did not know what this was. I was like, I didn't even know how to pronounce it. I was like, Mississauga. And they were like, no, it's Mississauga. And I had to say it many times, like to get it right. Mississauga. And Mississauga is just about like 30 minutes west of Toronto. It's part of the Greater Toronto area. And I said, I got an interview here, and this is the highest paying job that I've seen so far. And they later told me I was one out of 132 online applicants. I had no network, and they shortlisted me down to like the top 3. And I went in and I told them, okay, I prepped out of the world for this interview. So I had looked at their website and I said, these are the gaps in what you're teaching. And I created a 2-page document that walked through all the things that I saw that they can improve in their programming and their offerings, and how I had used my experience in the International Student Center to improve the program offerings there, and how I could add value. And I nailed the interview.
It
And
sounds that way.
yeah, because I was prepared for every question. And they asked me like, who did your interview prep? Like at the end of it, they said, who taught you how to prep like this for an interview? And I said, I did. I had taken all these courses and I walked them through my process of like codifying information. My interview ended up being was supposed to be like 45 minutes, and it ended up being like an hour and a half. They gave me a little tour of the university towards the end. They brought me to some of their colleagues and said, hey, she has some really useful information. I think she'd be really useful for you to speak with. And at the end of it, when I was hired, so they didn't say it on the spot, but they were like, whoa, they said we do have to interview under other candidates, but this was a very impressive interview. And like they asked me, like, do I have like what are my connections in Toronto? And I said, I don't have I don't have anybody. I'm an international student. I came here by myself. To summarize that, like the key things that I did was I stopped applying for any job and I started using that rabbit hole process to apply for jobs that I really wanted that would help me achieve my life goals, where I actually had the skills to solve that problem. That was the number one change. So instead of applying for any job, tailor the jobs that you're applying for and narrow it down. The second piece was, instead of writing a resume as a history of tasks and responsibilities, I wrote a resume as a history of solving problems and meeting people's needs, in, for a similar problem to the problem outlined in the job description, because the job description is an outline of the problem. And then the third thing that I did was I sold myself, not just in the sense of, okay, like again, the tasks and responsibilities. I sold myself in saying, this is the larger problem that I solved within this company. This is how I added value.
Yes.
And when people learn how to do these things, as I said, you can get promoted every like 18 to 36 months. And then once you get into an interview process, how do you discern whether this is going to be someplace that you like working versus someplace that you don't? Because a lot of people initially, when you're in that scarcity mindset, it's like, I need any job. And then you get into that job and, you know, unfortunately, some of us experience toxic work environments. I know you've been there, Christina. And you could say, like, did you want to run away? Did you want to escape?
Yes.
Were you
I
making
think the
good money?
only reason I survived is because we went remote. Otherwise, I probably would have ran away.
Yes.
But it was even at a remote level, it was toxic.
Were you making enough money to pay your bills and be comfortable?
Oh yeah, but I was underpaid. So it was like mentally, it wasn't enough. I could pay my bills. I could afford to live comfortably. Comfortably is a good word.
Yeah,
I could pay my
exactly.
bills. I could pay my bills. Yeah.
Comfortably when you're in a toxic work environment and you're being underpaid, because that's the reality of it. You will be working hard, but because you don't know how to sell yourself, you're not working up to your full potential.
Yep.
And so you'll know and you'll see other people around you getting promotions and be like, well, what's this person doing differently that I'm not doing? And why is this person climbing up in their career and I'm just stuck here? And unless you're willing to like receive feedback and be coached and change your approach, you can be stuck for a long time.
A long time. And you can, and I think that the trap is the illusion of being unstuck because you got a job that you think is it. That's even worse. So 90 days, I just want to ask one quick question. How did this 90-day thing happen? Like at the time, is it that if you don't find a job by a certain time, you can't get your postgraduate work permit? What was the 90-day thing?
I think the same thing may apply now. I'm not sure, but you have about, I think, 90 days after you graduate to apply for your post-graduation work permit. So you can't apply for, like, you can't go and apply for a post-graduation work permit a year after you've graduated, I think, right?
No, right.
Like there's a window where you can apply. But for me to meet that window, I needed a letter from my university to say that I graduated. But for me to get that letter from because that's part of the application.
You didn't finish your tuition.
But the university will not release that letter until you've paid your tuition.
So you need
but I need a job to pay the tuition. Yes.
I see. Okay. So you need a job to finish paying the tuition. So then the school will give you the letter so then you could apply for your postgraduate work permit. Otherwise, you would have missed your window of getting your postgraduate work permit.
Yes.
Bam. Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That is how she had 90 days to find a job or leave the country, and she codified the information She did a lot of research, a lot of preparation, and I think that a lot of people are cutting corners because they just want something to happen and happen quickly, and they're not patient. But you did a lot of research on the company, you did a lot of research on their needs, and then how your needs aligned with their needs, and sold yourself and got yourself that job. And that's the summary of how to turn the 0 to a 70. You're very strategic in your job search, your application, and your resume. Boom. Nice. I think what we want to shift into now is to talk a little bit more about the immigrant mindset. And we're going to do that in episode 3 with Jette. This is episode 2. If this is the first one you're watching, go back and watch episode 1. If all of them are out, spend some time just binge watching all these episodes, because this is some good quality information for all you job seekers out there suffering in the streets. It doesn't have to be that way, okay? So we're going to talk about the immigrant mindset in the next episode, and why we're going to talk about immigrant mindset, because we add another layer to needing money and then needing to fulfill our immediate needs, plus needing to do something that's going to check the boxes for immigration so we can get that PR or that passport. So there's another layer there that needs to be unpacked. So we are going to talk about it in episode 3. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, Jette. I'll see you in episode 3 after these breaks, after these messages. Thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe, share if this was helpful for you. Hit the like button and stay tuned for episode 3 next week, Sunday. Or if it's already out, watch it now.